Have you ever felt that electric rush of anticipation when a young athlete steps onto the ice, brimming with untested potential? There's an almost magical quality to that moment. Fans lean forward in their seats, coaches watch with narrowed eyes, and the hum of expectation crackles like static in the air. Now, picture a kid from a small town in New Brunswick, Canada, defying obstacles from the start, pushing himself at every turn, and winning over everyone who's lucky enough to see him play. That was Luc Bourdon, a defenseman whose journey from humble beginnings to the spotlight of the NHL felt like the beginning of a legend in the making. Yet, in one heartbreaking instant, that legend never got the chance to fully unfold. What follows is a story that resonates far beyond hockey. It's about dreams, destiny, adversity, and the cruel finality that can strike when the future seems brightest. In the northeastern edge of New Brunswick, where winters are brutal, but hockey is the lifeblood of the community, Shippagan is not a bustling metropolis, it's a modest maritime town, known more for its fishing industry than for producing professional athletes. But if you're a hockey lover in Canada, and many people in Shippagan are, then you know your local arena is a place of possibility, a portal to bigger worlds. You can practically feel the chill of the ice the minute you step inside, 1,000 skate blades carving lines that tell stories of triumphs and heartbreaks that have unfolded there. In that small-town setting, Luc Bourdon was just one more boy with a stick, practicing crossovers and dreaming of the big leagues. But there was something special about Luc right from the start. Coaches, parents, and even rival kids noticed how he skated with a purpose that belied his age. He was a defenseman who played aggressively, not just in the sense of delivering hits, but in pushing the play, orchestrating breakouts and taking calculated risks that smaller children would never dare. If there was a puck battle along the boards, Luc would be the first to barrel in. If there was a loose puck in the offensive zone, he'd pinch in without hesitation, trusting his instincts even at an age when most young players hesitate to deviate from their coach's instructions. There was a fire in his eyes whenever he hit the ice, and you can't teach that kind of hunger. Yet, life had an unexpected challenge in store for him early on. Diagnosed with juvenile arthritis, Luc faced a limitation that might have sidelined lesser-spirited kids. Hockey is already brutal on the joints. The rigor of a single game can feel punishing. Imagine that your body begins betraying you with inflammation and pain before you even reach your teenage years. Many might have questioned whether pushing through was worth it, but to Luc, that challenge was just another obstacle he fully intended to crush. If doctors said to be cautious, he doubled his efforts. If training was painful, he found a way to adapt. These early battles did more than fortify his body. They forged a relentless attitude that would define his entire approach to the sport. Put simply, Luc Bourdon was not afraid of hardship. He'd already shaken hands with it, stared it down, and kept skating. As the years went by and Luc grew, it became increasingly obvious that small-town rinks could no longer contain his potential. Scouts took note, local headlines touted his name, and talk spread about him being a top defenseman in his age group. He made the leap to the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, QMJHL, a key developmental stage for many of Canada's brightest hockey stars. In the Q, he suited up for teams like the Val-d'Or Foreurs and the Moncton Wildcats, where he was quickly recognized for his powerful shot and steady presence on the blue line. The league is notorious for its frenetic, high-scoring style, and it was the perfect testing ground for Luc's brand of dynamic defense. He could thread a pass through traffic, step up for a booming slap shot, or read an opponent's rush and pivot into a perfect defensive posture, all with remarkable poise for a teenager. It wasn't long before the NHL's radar zeroed in on him. The 2005 NHL draft was a headline event for multiple reasons. For one, the league was emerging from a lockout that had canceled the entire 2004 to 2005 season, and franchises were reassessing their strategies in a new financial and competitive landscape. Second, that draft class included some names that were projected to reshape the league: Sidney Crosby, Carey Price, Andrei Kopitar. This was a generation that would eventually dominate the next decade and more. Amidst that star-studded crop of prospects, Luc Bourdon's name rose in the ranks. He was heralded as one of the premier defensemen available, a top 10 candidate with a near-future star label. That's a lot of weight to place on any 18-year-old, but if you'd seen Luc in action, you might have believed it was warranted. When the Vancouver Canucks used their 10th overall pick to select Luc Bourdon, the sense of promise was palpable. Vancouver was, at that time, a city hungry for a new era. The West Coast Express Line, Marcus Naslund, Todd Bertuzzi, and Brendan Morrison had delivered excitement but was reaching its twilight. Meanwhile, two Swedish twins named Henrik and Daniel Sadin were stepping into bigger roles. Canucks fans, known for their deep emotional investment in the team, latched onto the idea that Bourdon might be the missing piece on the back end. Could he be the two-way defenseman they needed to complement the evolving core? Hype swelled. Articles poured in, heralding him as the future. Fans on message boards debated how quickly he should jump to the NHL, whether he needed more seasoning in juniors or the minors, and how best to groom him for success. It was a cacophony of excitement and scrutiny, the kind of intense atmosphere that can either make or break a top prospect. Yet, Luc showed little sign of being overwhelmed. He approached training camp with the same relentless spirit that propelled him through childhood adversity. Though he faced stiff competition for a roster spot, he displayed flashes of brilliance, an interception here, a crisp breakout pass there, a rocket from the point that had goaltenders flinching. Coaches saw that he was raw but undeniably gifted. He'd get some preseason action, a few glimpses of the NHL pace, then more training in the American Hockey League, AHL, with the Manitoba Moose. For a young athlete, the AHL can be a harsh environment. You're surrounded by players either fighting their way up or clinging desperately to professional hockey careers, and the physicality can be downright punishing. But Luc embraced it. He refined his decision-making, learned to cope with bigger bodies in front of the net, and sharpened his instincts against talented forwards. Each call-up to Vancouver hinted that the final leap to a permanent NHL job was just a matter of time. What truly stoked the national conversation around Luc Bourdon, however, was his performance on the international stage at the World Junior Championships. For Canadians, the annual tournament is more than just a sporting event. It's a holiday staple, an emotional roller coaster. Here, Luc wore the maple leaf on his jersey in 2006 and 2007, helping Team Canada secure back-to-back gold medals. You could feel his presence every time he hopped over the boards. He was confident on the power play, blasting slap shots from the point that rattled the boards if they missed the net. On defense, he was reliable, reading the rush effectively, not easily baited by tricky forwards. His composure in these pressure cooker situations was striking. It often takes young defensemen a couple of tournaments to adjust to the intensity, but Luc dove right in. When Canada took the gold, the image of Bourdon singing the anthem, medal around his neck, left an indelible mark on fans across the nation. They saw a future star, someone who embraced the big moments rather than shying away from them. In Vancouver, that excitement spilled over into every conversation about the team's prospects. It's a hockey-mad market, after all. The local media dissected Bourdon's every step, from how he taped his stick to how he carried himself in locker room interviews. While some pundits questioned if he was quite ready for top minutes, most believed that time was on his side and that the organization had every reason to be patient, to let him bloom at his own pace. Yet Luc, for all his humility, wasn't shy about his ambition. He wanted to make an impact right away. He didn't see the point in waiting 3 or 4 seasons to be a difference maker. That determination became especially clear during the 2007 to 2008 season. With injuries on the Canucks' blue line, Bourdon earned more NHL appearances, often matched against tough opponents. He had his share of rookie mistakes, overcommitting on a rush, taking a poorly timed penalty. But he also delivered moments that made you think, this kid can hang with the best of them. One of those moments was his first NHL goal, scored against the Minnesota Wild. It was a straightforward play on paper, a shot through traffic, but the context made it electric. The arena lit up with roars, and the camera caught that ecstatic gleam in Luc's eyes. In the post-game interviews, teammates teased him about rookie rituals, but they also lauded his ability to elevate under pressure. Every sports story has an inflection point, an instant, a game, or a series of events that shape the trajectory. For Luc Bourdon, many fans pinpoint a set of late-season games when the Canucks were teetering on the edge of the playoff picture. Defensive injuries forced him into bigger minutes, and he responded by playing some of his most poised hockey. Analysts on regional broadcasts started to compare him to veterans around the league, noting his uncanny calm in high-stakes situations. It was as if the adversity spurred him on, the same way juvenile arthritis never held him back. Vancouver didn't make a deep playoff run that year, but the silver lining was clear. Bourdon was on track to become a mainstay, part of a new wave that could build around the Sedins, Kevin Bieksa, and other emerging talents. If this were a scripted sports movie, the next act would show Bourdon conquering the league, perhaps winning a Norris Trophy, or leading the Canucks to a Stanley Cup. Instead, what happened next was a bolt from the blue, a moment that shattered the illusions of immortality we often drape over our sports heroes. On May 29, 2008, Luc Bourdon was back in New Brunswick, enjoying some well-deserved off-season downtime. He hopped on his recently purchased motorcycle, a symbol of freedom for many young adults, to clear his head and take in the scenic roads. Motorcycles are thrilling, but they're unforgiving machines. One slip of control, one unexpected twist in the road, and everything changes forever. That day, Luc lost control of his bike and collided head-on with a tractor-trailer. The impact was catastrophic, and he was killed on the spot. He was only 21. When the news broke, it was met with denial and disbelief. Twitter and Facebook were just emerging as major news sources in 2008, but the story spread like wildfire. Sports channels ran the headline in constant loops. Radio stations fielded tearful calls from fans. In Vancouver, some people recall hearing the news on their commute and pulling over to the side of the road, too distraught to drive. In a single horrifying instant, a city, a league, and the entire hockey community lost a young man brimming with life and potential. The shock was profound for anyone who had followed his journey. How could someone who'd battled through arthritis, thrived under pressure, and carried so much of a fan base's hopes just be gone in a blink? The sadness that enveloped Vancouver was overwhelming. Outside Rogers Arena, then General Motors Place, fans created makeshift memorials, flowers, teddy bears, handwritten notes, cards, and old hockey sticks taped together as tributes. Social media posts were flooded with stories from people who had met him, even if just for a moment, how he'd signed a jersey for a young kid, how he'd smiled bashfully when recognized on the street. The personal dimension of the tragedy hit home. He wasn't just a jersey number, but a human being with a fiancé, a family, and an entire network of loved ones who were reeling. The Vancouver Canucks organization rallied to honor their fallen teammate. They held a poignant pregame tribute at the start of the next season. The arena went dark, a lone spotlight shone on center ice, and a video montage played across the Jumbotron. There he was, celebrating gold with Team Canada, scoring his first NHL goal, laughing on the bench with fellow rookies. In the hush of the crowd, you could hear sniffling. Grown men, many of them hockey players who pride themselves on stoicism, found themselves fighting back tears. Hockey is a tough sport in which pain is accepted as part of the job, but emotional heartbreak is something else entirely. The tribute ended, a moment of silence fell, and fans, some wearing jerseys with Bourdon's name on the back, offered a final, thundering round of applause. In the following days, players wore commemorative patches on their jerseys, and tributes poured in from around the league. Opposing teams held their own moments of silence. The hockey community, so often divided by rivalries and loyalties, came together in grief. Local TV channels interviewed his former junior coaches, who spoke about his boundless determination. Teammates shared anecdotes, like the time he stayed late after practice to work on a new pivot drill, or the practical jokes he pulled in the locker room. Roberto Luongo, the star goaltender and team leader, expressed heartbreak at losing a teammate who had so much more to give. The raw vulnerability in those interviews crystallized just how well-liked Luc had been. As the immediate shock wore off, the entire hockey world began pondering the gut-wrenching what-ifs. Could Luc Bourdon have become a top-pairing defenseman, maybe even an all-star by his mid-20s? Would he have been a key piece in Vancouver's future, possibly altering the outcome of the 2011 Stanley Cup Final when the Canucks fell just one game short of hoisting the cup? That 2011 team was stacked, led by the Sedins, Ryan Kessler, Alex Burrows, and a formidable blue line. But depth sometimes comes down to having just one more capable defenseman. Imagining Bourdon as part of that run intensifies the heartbreak. The what-if scenarios are almost endless, spinning out from that single tragic afternoon on a New Brunswick road. For Vancouver fans, Luc Bourdon's memory remains a tender wound and a source of profound nostalgia. Over the years, whenever a new defenseman emerged, whether it was Chris Tanev, Troy Stecher, or Quinn Hughes, some would whisper, could he become the next Bourdon? It was never quite a fair comparison because Luc's story was unique, wrapped in both promise and tragedy. Nonetheless, his name became shorthand for untapped potential, a measuring stick for what might have been. Fans would recall that big grin, those lightning-fast first strides, and that booming shot from the point. Even now, on the anniversaries of his passing, social media lights up with tributes, highlight reels, old interviews, and heartfelt messages of what Luc meant to them. Ultimately, Luc Bourdon left behind more than a few goals and a handful of highlight reels. He left behind a legacy of resilience, a shining example of how to fight through adversity and give your all. He also left behind an empty space in the hearts of fans, an unfulfilled promise that will forever haunt those who saw his star rising. But if you've ever grieved his loss, remember that his spirit lives on in every young player who dares to dream big, in every fan who believes in a better tomorrow for their team, and in every moment we share a communal gasp at the beauty and heartbreak of sport. Thank you for taking this extended journey through Luc Bourdon's life and career. His story may be marked by tragedy, but it also illuminates the spark of determination and hope that draws us to sports in the first place. Now, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you see Luc Bourdon as one of the greatest what-if stories in the history of hockey? Could his presence have changed the Vancouver Canucks' destiny, or even reshaped the NHL in subtle ways we'll never truly know? Let's keep his memory alive, not just with sorrow, but with an acknowledgement of the joy and passion he brought every time he laced up his skates. Share this story, pass it on to someone new, and keep the discussion going. In doing so, we honor what he stood for, the boundless love of a game, the resilience to overcome, and the unwavering belief that every shift could lead to the moment that changes everything.